Hello and welcome to Gadget Joe, and today we have a Phantom in the studio. Yes, in today's video we do indeed have a Phantom in the studio, and that is the Tecware Phantom Plus. Now, about 4 years ago we actually covered the Tecware Phantom, the original version of this very keyboard, and we was left very impressed with what we got from the keyboard, considering it was a mid to high end keyboard. Obviously you can pick up some keyboards for very expensive price points. This sort of slots itself in the middle of the market. Now this one is no different. This one you can pick up for around £70 to £90. I will leave a link in the description down below where you can get the cheapest version. Now, Tecware are not particularly a massively well-known brand, but they are a brand that have got some very fantastic products. Now, despite them not being a massive brand, I did get a chance to catch up with the guys over at the team, including Justin, who agreed to send this over so that we can take a look at it, compare it to the original Phantom that we have covered. Now, the guys at Tecware were at the TechMax show, which I previously did a video on, where it was obviously a tech convention, and we got to look and meet plenty of vendors, the UK vendors, and again, Tecware were there showing off some of their products, and I'm definitely quite excited to cover some more of their products because they've got some really nice, interesting products. And again, they don't fall on the premium end in terms of pricing, but their products feel absolutely fantastic, and you can certainly pass these off as a premium product if you have them on your setup. So enough talking about the brand itself, let's get down to the product. It's an 87 key keyboard. It doesn't have the numerical pad at the end, and obviously you'll see that when we get the box open very shortly. They do have a 104 key full-size variant as well, and it is not a wireless module. It is obviously a wired one, but we'll get more to that very shortly. In typical Gadget Joe fashion, what we're going to do is take a look at the box and see how it's all boxed, and then we're going to get it open, see what you get in the box, and then at the end of that we're going to do some quick testing on it, see how it is, see what the build quality is like, and then at the end of the video we'll see what our final findings are. So straight into the box itself. It is pretty nice and premium feeling. Again, something that they are aiming to do is give you that premium experience on a relatively lower price point. Now, the box is all black with some very nice, simple, glossy images on it. All the font is quite subtle. As you can see, you've got the brand on the top with a nice image of the keyboard at the center, and then below that is the Phantom Plus RGB mechanical keyboard. You do have some basic information because it is an RGB keyboard, because pretty much everything nowadays is RGB. And then obviously at the top you have some information about which switches that the keyboard uses, which I'll touch upon very shortly. At the back there's a little bit more information about the keyboard with some key features. Around the rest of it, it is pretty simple branding. So the boxing looks and feels very nice. It definitely feels quite premium. What we're going to do now is get it open and see what you get inside. So when we open the box, you get a nice little message from the founder of Tecware. It's got a simple message to say who they are and obviously thank you for purchasing the product. You then get some little accessories in a relatively simple packaged box. Now, the box itself contains a bag with some extra keycaps in there. You get 4 included so that you can switch out any of them that are broken. You also get a keycap puller. Now, it's quite a basic rudimentary one, but it definitely does the job. You've got quite a substantial one on this side, and then the other one is a slightly more flimsy one for getting over the keycaps on there. You also get a long braided USB-C or USB-A to USB-C cable. Now, despite the fact that the cable is detached, as you can see here, it is not a cordless or wireless keyboard. It is one that is powered via USB cable, but the reason that they have an additional cable that can be detached means that you can also then further customize it if you wish to do so, because when it comes to keyboards, a lot of people that really are into keyboards do like to customize their keyboards a lot, so that you can do that with this. And also it's a added bonus because if the cable starts to fray or starts to have some connection issues, you can just simply replace them for a new one. It is braided, as I mentioned before. It does feel quite nice. It's nice and sturdy. It's got a little bit of flex to it, but not too much. It's pretty much enough so that when it's sat on your desk, it will stay where it needs to stay, and it shouldn't really catch on things. Again, it is nice and long, which you expect from a keyboard cable. Even though it's primarily going to be plugged into the back of your computer and straight in front of you, it is always nice to have that extra length. And that's pretty much it for the accessories. It's quite simple. You've got some replacement keycaps, and then you have the keycap puller and the braided cable, as we have already discussed. Now, the keyboard itself is packaged in a foam bag. Now, it does feature a little plastic keyboard guard. Now, this is obviously to protect it during shipping, but also you can keep hold of this because if you have a house that has pets in it, for example, long-haired cats or dogs, or even short-haired cats and dogs that do molt quite often, or you work in a quite busy, dusty area, this could be handy to keep so that when you're not using it, you can just simply place it over the keyboard and you've got some extra protection. And then you have the keyboard itself. Again, it's nice and compact, but one thing I have noticed straight away is it is a surprisingly weighty keyboard. It's very, very well constructed, and it does have a significant amount of weight to it, which is actually quite reassuring. It's something that I really quite like in a keyboard because it gives it that sense of reliability and structural strength. Also, at the bottom of the box is some basic information, if we just move these out of the way, about the build of the Phantom Plus. Now, the build of a Phantom Plus is quite different to a standard one because it's actually made up of multiple different layers. Now, the bottom of the keyboard is a hard plastic outer casing. That's what everything sits into position on. On the back of it, you do have 4 rubber pads, which basically keep it into position and obviously eliminate any vibration from the keyboard when you are using it. And then you do also have some adjustable feet on here so you can raise the height of the keyboard. You've got some basic information on a sticker here, and then you have a little housing for the USB points here. Now, there is a little blanking plate here, which I'm not too sure why that's there, but maybe they share this chassis with some of the other models on their lineup. Now, inside that, you have the PCB board. Now, the PCB board is pretty much the main heart of the keyboard. That's what holds all the wires and everything, the contact points and everything that you need to make the keyboard work. Now, that PCB is built of a double sheet fiberglass panel, so it's quite strong and rigid anyway. That PCB is then sandwiched between 3 different various stages of sound deadening foam. Now, the foam is basically designed to remove any vibration and also protect the keyboard from any large thumps, and also it helps to reduce the sound level as well. There is also an additional pour-on foam, which is basically a porous foam layer just above the PCB for additional security and sound deadening. And then on top of that, it is all capped with a gunmetal alloy housing plate. Now, that is the final bit that you see here, and it is indeed a metal alloy, and it is really nice and sturdy. All of those combined together give the keyboard a very, very solid feel. Historically, I don't go soft on the products when I review them. I do really try and twist them and flex them a bit, and if they break, they break. It shows the quality of a product. Now, this one, I am really putting some force in there, and it just does not flex at all, and that's thanks to those multiple layers of construction in there. It is a very, very well made product. So now let's get a little bit of a closer look at the actual keycaps themselves. Now, the keycaps, as I mentioned before, you can take them off with the keycap puller that you see here. They are double shot ABS keycaps. Now, what that means is there is 2 plastic layers effectively inside there. One of them is the undercoat and the other one is the black coating on top, a black layer on top, and that is what shows the legend through on the middle. Now, the legend is very, very clear on these, and obviously they are RGB. I'm going to connect it up in a moment so that you can see how the RGB looks on this keyboard. And with them being OEM keycaps means that you can actually switch them out for some, if you wanted to put some custom ones on there. Custom keyboards is a big business. Now, it's not something you see very often, but if you're into it, there's a huge market out there and a huge community for said products. So the fact that it is an OEM keycap, meaning basically you've got that cross shape at the back so that it can mount onto the keys, makes it super simple for customization. Now they have gone one step further than the original Phantom, because the original Phantom was already a very solid keyboard, but what they've done on this one is they've added some additional sound dampening. Now obviously you have those additional layers of foam inside the keyboard construction itself, but what they have done is they've added some additional clipped and lubed V3 stabilizers within the keycap, so that you don't have to do any additional customization to the keyboard. Now if you know what you're doing with keyboards, you know what you'll often try and end up doing is lubing the keycaps and then making sure everything works nice and smoothly. This has already been done for you. There's no need to do any of that. All the keycaps have been clipped, they've been lubed, they've been set up to the perfect optimization for an instant use scenario. Also on the spacebar they've added a silicone bar for additional sound dampening. In a short while I'm going to set up the microphone next to the keyboard and we're going to do some typing and you'll get a good idea of how that sounds. For now we're going to move on to the switches themselves. Now the best part about having a mechanical keyboard is that you have mechanical switches. Also the fact that you can remove the switches as well means that you can then, obviously as you see earlier with the additional switches that were included in the box, you can remove them and replace them if needed. This also helps for additional maintenance of the keyboard. When it comes to removing the switches to get access to them, it is super simple. You're going to need your keycap puller. Now obviously to take the actual keycaps off you can use either side, but I would probably recommend using the thinner side to take the actual keycap off. As you can see, it just slides underneath and then you can take it away from the keyboard. Using the other side, the slightly more substantial side, it does have some little noggins at the bottom, and that simply clips onto the switch and then you close them down and you just simply pull it out and then you have access to the switch. Now when it comes to picking the switches for your keyboard, there are multiple different options available. The ones that we have on this keyboard are the red switches. Now they're not cherry switches like with conventional mechanical keyboards, they are Tecware's own Wraith brand switches. They come in different variants such as orange, brown, pink and red, and I will display on the screen right now the differences between them. They have slightly different actuation forces depending on the colour that you choose. So obviously the red one here is quite a light switch, meaning that it doesn't need much force to press the button in. With it being a linear keycap as well, it means that the press just goes straight down to the bottom and there's no actuation force or bump that you need that you would find from the tactile versions. The tactile switches generally require a slightly higher bottom out force, as you can see on the charts here. They all have a 3.8mm total travel distance, and for myself I personally prefer the reds. They are very similar to the cherry reds, the same as the cherry browns. The oranges and browns, being a tactical switch, are often also quite a bit louder due to the fact that you have that additional switch, that bump. When it comes to mechanical keyboard switches, they directly affect their performance. So obviously many gamers and typists carefully compare linear versus tactile switches to see which is the best for their needs. So we now have a keyboard connected to power, and as you can see the RGB lighting modes look absolutely fantastic. Now it's a bit difficult to see in this lighting, so I'm going to put on the screen now some video of the lighting modes that are available. There are multiple different modes, in fact there are 18 preset modes on this. Now the functions can be switched through either switching the RGB on or off by pressing the function key and the plus and equal key at the top, because there is an RGB legend on the front of the keycap. Now on the insert home page up, delete and page down section here of the keyboard, there is an M1, M2, M3, M4, M5 and M6 key. Now these, all you have to do is basically keep hold of the function key and flick through the different modes. Now there are a lot of interactive modes as well, so that when you press the keys they will interact with the key press. as you can see, the lighting modes are absolutely fantastic on this keyboard. Now you'll have seen me doing a lot of typing and you'll probably hear it from the microphone as I've been doing this video, but what I'm going to do now is lay the microphone next to the keyboard and then you'll get a good example how these red linear switches sound. Now you can hear with the spacebar being the biggest keycap on the keyboard, it does have that dampening on there and it is very effective. And that's pretty much it, the review of the Tecware Phantom Plus 87 key keyboard. Obviously they do have a 104 key keyboard as well, so if you prefer a bigger keyboard with the numerical keypad on the side, then obviously you can go for that. They do only come currently in black. They do also do models that you can switch the frame out at the top altogether so that you can really customize the look of your keyboard. Now the keyboard is an absolutely fantastic feeling device. It really feels nice and sturdy, as you saw earlier in the video when I tried to sort of flex it. There's no flex or movement whatsoever. Those four rubber feet really do keep it planted and in place. Now the sound is obviously quite loud, but that's generally what you would expect from a mechanical keyboard. Now a mechanical keyboard is always going to be slightly louder than a membrane keyboard, which is the usual cheap keyboards that you get, because they just work on a single switch. It's not even a switch, it's like a sensor of a button, and it has a rubber membrane over the top, so all of them just basically press on that. With a mechanical switch you get more versatility, more customization, and obviously maintenance is much easier to do because you can then individually remove each keycap and each key switch so that you can maintain it, lube it, do whatever you need to do, and also customize it if you do wish to do so. Typing on the Phantom Plus was a very good experience all around. It's just a very good, solid performing keyboard. Now I prefer the red linear switches. Now generally speaking I do a lot of typing rather than gaming, so most people would probably recommend a more tactile switch, but for myself I just prefer the single linear switch of a linear switch. Now I don't claim to be an impressively fast typer. I can type fast, as you can see on the screen, generally type quite well, but I do start to make mistakes, so again, as you can see on the screen. But this is a nice keyboard to work with, and it's just a very, very well laid out keyboard, and its mostly primary function is the solid build design. Now there's a lot of extra attention to detail that Tecware have put into this keyboard. Now each edge of the keyboard casing has been beveled off really quite nicely, so there's no sharp corners. It's a nice little addition to the whole aesthetic of it. It gives it that premium aesthetic, and again, that's something that I mentioned at the start of the video. This is a very premium feeling keyboard for not a very premium price point. Now obviously you can get much cheaper keyboards than what you see here. In fact, we've actually reviewed some on the channel, some much cheaper mechanical keyboards, but if you're wanting to go for some real high quality, then look at something like this. Now there are some keyboards on the market that fetch upwards of up to £1,000, which is ludicrous. I could not really get my head around spending that sort of money on a keyboard myself. So if you're wanting a keyboard that has a really good solid build quality and feel to it, looks the part, feels the part and works the part, then look no further than the Tecware Phantom Plus RGB from Tecware. So yeah, that's pretty much my review of the Phantom Plus keyboard. The only real thing I would probably change about this, and it's not a fault with the product itself, is that I would have it in white. I am quite biased to a white component or product, and it's very nice to see. You don't see many white keyboards on the market anyway, so it would be nice to see something like this in a white offering. But in general, there's no faults that I've found with this keyboard. The build quality has really sort of set the bar for a product of this price point, and it is going to make it quite difficult to compete with a product of this price point. So as always, I will, as mentioned earlier in the video, leave a link down in the description down below so that you can go and get one for yourself. Obviously take into consideration which kind of switches you want for this. They do come in different variants, as I covered, and it's just down to a personal preference. Now the best thing obviously with it being a mechanical keyboard, as I've already mentioned in this video, is that you can customize it, and if you do find that after a bit of time you're not really liking the switches that are on there, rather than buying an entire new keyboard, you can just replace the switches on there. And that's pretty much it. This has been the Tecware Phantom Plus RGB 87 key keyboard, and I've been Gadget Joe, and until next time, goodbye.